glad you're here. You're listening to the SBP Podcast Mobile Filmmaking. This is episode 197, and I'm your host, Susie Botello.
We are Fade into Film.
Hey everybody, welcome back to our Fade into Film programming tonight or today, or maybe you're on the moon, wherever you happen to be. We have our occasional guest. Are you in Mars? Jason Rivera is here with us, along with Joey Min. Yay, Jason!
Thank you. It's good to be here with you both. Thank you so much.
Yeah. It's a real treat to have you. The reason I brought Jason into our show tonight or today or whatever, you know what I mean, right, guys? The reason that I brought him is because we're going to be talking about music. We're going to talk about music and film and storytelling, how music is part of your story. And it's going to be a pretty awesome show. So grab a pillow, grab some popcorn, and get ready because we're going to have some fun. Jason, before we start, how have you been? What's up?
I've been good. I've been working away. I mean, we haven't chatted, I think in almost a year was the last time I was on one of these episodes. So it's been a while, but I've been well, working and doing my thing.
Working on films and making more music, or? Yeah.
I'm scoring something at the moment.
As we speak.
Not as we speak, but
I'm clearing out my hard drive while we're talking right now. So,
Jeez, yeah, I was doing that today. My hard drive fills up like so fast.
Same here.
I'm like, where'd you come from? All I did was turn you on. I haven't done anything yet. You guys, I'm sure, have those issues. Content creators, right? Like us, and filmmakers, musicians, artists, graphics, photographers, we all deal with that. Our hard drives just fill up so fast, and we got to grab the, I don't know about you guys, but I back it up, and then I also copy things that are majorly important to an external hard drive.
oh yeah, no, definitely.
yeah.
Actually, it's funny. I got an email like 2 weeks ago from a client that I did his wedding video 13 years ago. And,
wow.
and he was messaging, hey, my old hard drives, like whatever, like they burned and I lost everything. Right? Like, would you happen to have a copy? I'm like, man, good thing I'm a pack rat. Yes, I do. Like I have all of your stuff. So that made me feel good.
I haven't heard that in so long. I love that term, pack rat.
I'm a digital pack rat. I have hard drives of all my old stuff, but good thing this guy's. That's it. I was just thinking about that when you guys were mentioning.
Yeah. Well, I've got every podcast, since 2017 on an external hard drive, and then backups.
Wow.
And I don't mean just the audio file. I mean, like, the files that are, I forgot what the extension is, where I edit it as well.
You mean the
so
project
that I
file
can
for
open the project files, the original recording files, the formatted project files, on some of them more recently, I'm doing, this, when I sync them, the tracks, that's a completely separate one before I even edit. And then I have the edited one is separate because that one gets chopped up, and things like that, and all these little details. And if I screw that up really bad, I'm like, well, I'll go back to the synced file and start over. And that's happened a couple times, to be honest.
That's smart. It's smart to have backups.
Well, I got a smartphone. It made me smart. So anyways, I think this is a good time to start talking about our topic. I should put in a sound effect here. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, it's not that dramatic.
That made me a little nervous.
Yeah, I know, right? You're like, oh my God. So we want to talk about, I mean, somebody somewhere, I think it was on Threads today that I read someone say, none of you are there, but but I'm there. And other people are there, a few million. And somebody mentioned storytelling, music is storytelling or something like that. And I was like, yeah, I've been saying that for some time. And I'm going to also, in the show notes, I'm going to add the episode where it was one-on-one with you, Jason, and the article, with your beautiful photos of your studio and everything like that. And I'm going to add that to the show notes so that you guys can go back and see what Jason does in more detail. But I know that we spoke about that during that episode a little bit. So I thought that before we do that, Jason, that we sort of reintroduce you to our newer audience in case someone is new, because it's been a while since we last spoke on that, like you said, it's been a year, but it's probably been like 10 months or something.
Yeah.
So reintroduce what you do a little bit first.
Sure. Thank you. Well, I've been a musician for a very long time. I started with a little tape recorder as like a 4 or 5-year-old and just recording melodies and stuff, like literally I couldn't play an instrument at that time. So I was just like singing ideas into a cassette recorder and I would sort of save them. I just have always been involved in music since then, and I think of music. I don't know if a lot of people could relate to this. Maybe musicians could, but I think of music as almost like this field, energy field that's always been around me, that I've been inside of, like basically my entire life, as far back as I can remember. And so my journey was just figuring out ways to be able to express and to create the things I was hearing in my head, the melodies and the chord progressions. So my young life was like the journey of me learning instruments, playing in bands, and eventually learning how to compose so that I could express these ideas that I had locked up inside of me. And after playing in bands for like decades in different combinations, touring, I just slowly like recognized my deep love for film music, specifically among many genres. I mean, I listen to, you name it, I probably listen to it. And I go through like pretty deep phases into genres of music and styles. And but yeah, I want to say it was like maybe like 2013 or something like that, where I just realized it really hit me. Like, there's just so much wonderful film music that I really love, and it's something that I really want to explore. And so I entered into the film scoring program at UCLA at that time. And in that program, I really learned how to compose. We studied composition, like really super old school, like Bach, how to write and use techniques like that Bach used, which for like Western music is very much foundational, and then everything up through like 20th century styles. And, all of that's a huge, hundreds of years of music, but all of that has found its way into film music. And so that's been my journey. And then once I finished school, then it became this whole other beast of like, okay, well, now I actually want to find projects to work on. And, the first project was kind of horrible. It was a pretty terrible experience for me. And I questioned whether I wanted to even keep doing it. It was that bad.
Why was it bad? What happened?
I got ghosted.
Because you were a musician already.
Yeah, I mean, I had, experience already under my belt, and I had a little bit of a portfolio from school, but then like, okay, so now like, here's my first project where I'm actually like getting paid to do the composition and to write the score. And like halfway through the process, I got ghosted by the director. I still to this day don't know what happened. Yeah. And so like eventually, like it really bummed me out at first, but eventually I realized, well, who cares? You know, now I have these like several portfolio pieces. So I just started building up a catalog like that. And eventually, like maybe the next project after that was really good. It was a really positive experience for me. So I'm glad that I didn't give up. Yeah, since then it's just been kind of like a journey of like learning different aspects of film music, you know, because, well, the business side for one thing, which is its own beast, and it's a whole bunch of stuff you have to learn. Like if you want to pursue it as a career or, you know, in terms of like quote unquote more professional. And then there's also like learning that when you're a film composer, you're not just, you know, you're not in a band, you're not even a composer, really. You're part of the storytelling team, you know, and so you can't just do whatever the hell you feel like doing. You know, you really have to kind of rein yourself in, and you have to learn that you are one piece of a much bigger puzzle. And
you're part of a vision.
You're part of somebody else's vision. And if you respect that person or persons and you really can like embrace what their vision is, then yeah, you can hop on board, you know, and hopefully they trust you and they trust your skills in terms of scoring. But that's a very different way of writing music as opposed to just writing it for yourself or playing in a band or something like that. Because like I said, you're in service of the story as a film composer. So that's a little bit of my journey. Hopefully it wasn't too long.
Yeah, no, it's a good, you know, explanation of obviously like you knowing, understanding that how it actually like feeds into, you know, filmmaking as opposed to like, I guess music just for the music by itself. Like I didn't really think about that, you know?
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up too, Joey, that I wanted you to ask him something. But I was going to bring up that in a lot of filmmaking discussions online and things like that about the process, people talk about, especially maybe in mobile filmmaking and in indie filmmaking, right? They talk about going somewhere and picking songs, right? Selecting songs and then grabbing the license for using that song within their film, as opposed to hiring somebody like Jason to actually combine that song. The reason, what I wanted you to, you know, more in depth ask Jason, I hope Jason's okay with this, Joey, is how music plays with action and how important that probably is in action filmmaking.
Oh yeah, I mean,
you know,
yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think in every aspect of filmmaking, I think I might have a problem with this is that I think I put too much like background music. Like right now I'm learning how to really just, you know, be a better director. So I'm writing outside of just action and you know, trying to make something narrative. But yeah, I think right now, as I would say, I feel like my skill set or my skill level of writing narratively is kind of like Nickelodeon, like from the 2000s or something. That's like the level. So I tend to one, like spoon feed like emotion through like music, right? And the thing is, it's also kind of difficult for me, like in terms of music, because I think that I feel like music is how do I even say this? It's like
is it part of the story, right?
Well, yeah, because it's I know exactly what type of feeling that I want to portray, but
it's like an extra character in the story.
Sure, yes, definitely, but it's also kind of like I think it's difficult for me for not being a musical type of guy that I don't know how to explain or how to what exactly I'm looking for, like, you know, and I hate being that type of person where it's like I don't know what I want, but I know what I don't want, and that's like a terrible way of trying to, you know. And I was working with a film composer locally here, and he actually was like I think I used to take classes from him. Like I used to like try to learn how to play guitar, and I just annoyed the shit out of him, and I felt really bad. It's just simply because I couldn't explain what I want, and he had like a couple different versions of something, and
I have something to say about that. Something that Dewani Shah, when we were talking on the podcast not that long ago, one thing that she said really stood out for me. She said that a director needs to know the language of everybody's role, right? She needs to know how to speak all the terminology for music, all the terminology for lighting, all the terminology for everything, because they have to be able to explain the vision individually to each member of the crew in their terms. They can't just say, well, if you could just kind of do this and kind of do that, and I kind of want it like this, but not maybe a little lower, and things like that. It's not like they're wasting time, but they're not able to get a real detailed response from the professionals that she works with.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, do you have clients like that, or have you worked with other directors that are not musically inclined, so it's hard for them to actually explain to you what type of music that they're like asking for?
Yeah. I mean, I had one experience where the director said that they wanted something, and I knew it was wrong, and I didn't say anything. I just went and wrote what I thought was right. And it turned out that what I wrote was what the producer wanted, who was more experienced. And it just wound up working. Like, thank God that I trusted my instincts. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the one that stands out, I think. But other than that, I can't really say like I've ever been like annoyed in that way by a director.
It's more like difficult, the challenge. It's more challenging probably than something that annoys you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, sometimes I think on the flip side of that, I think sometimes I've also had the experience of working with somebody that was so detailed, not in detailed in terms of what they wanted, but detailed in terms of musical terminology and detailed in terms of what they thought had to happen, like at every split second, to the point where they were actually like writing the stuff at their own piano and sending me files and whatnot. And that's like the other extreme where I actually walked away. I just said, this is not for me. This is not going to be fun for me to do this. Like, I actually think that person should just write the score, just do like, John Carpenter style and just do it themselves. Like, if you really know what you want, like so strongly and so clearly, maybe just try it on, and try scoring it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to music. That's why, because like, I think like, when it comes to music, I feel like it's definitely much more natural than like the whole filmmaking thing. I feel like a visual art, I feel like you have to kind of learn how to be a visual artist, but I feel like with music, that's something like internal, whether like it's you either have it or you don't, when it comes to music. I feel like, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think technically, yes. I think some people just have a natural gift for music, for just making music. But I also think like to write scores, I do think you can come to the table with no experience and really good instincts, and that will really serve you well. But I do think it's helpful to also learn about the storytelling aspect and about the craft of making films as much as you can, because while making music could come very organically and very naturally, writing your music in service of a story, that's not really unless you're studying film scoring with a specific person, a specific teacher who knows about that. Like, you're not going to know how to do that. And I feel like sometimes that's where musicians and composers early on trip up, myself included. I think that was something I had to learn. Like, actually, I don't think I really learned that until I finished school and started working on projects. Like, yeah, certain things for sure come naturally, but there is a skill, I think, to not writing the notes necessarily and making the sounds, but to take your skills and to be able to put them into the service of a world that somebody else is creating. That was like a new idea for me early on, that I had to just like adapt to and learn.
When I was in college in my cinematography class, part of half the class really was on editing. And I didn't realize at the time, like, why are we doing so much editing? And the instructor was explaining to us that there's part of, you can edit something and just sort of chop here, put this transition here, put a fade in or a fade out, and how long they're going to be and when it's going to be a cut and stuff like that. But it's really when you learn cinematography that you learn the juxtaposition of things and which transition fits here and what it means there, type thing. Like, one of the things that stands out was a longer duration of a, how it goes into the fade in, right? It's video black, right? Mm-hmm. And then it goes to the next thing. Well, he said, if you make that just a couple seconds longer, it means time has passed more than just a few minutes or a different location, but some more serious time has passed. Mm-hmm. And you only know that if you study cinematography. Mm. And I thought, while you were saying that, Jason, I feel it's kind of that same, not exactly the same, but kind of towards that concept of knowing the technical part of storytelling, right? With the technical part of composing music, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the marriage of the two. Because again, like you're not just writing whatever music you feel like it's gotta fit, it's gotta serve the story.
It's gotta have like a purpose in a way.
Absolutely.
I know you write. You've worked on many of the films that you've worked on have been like horror films.
Yeah. Several.
And and we know that how important. I mean, I wouldn't say it's more important. You know what I'm saying? But because there's a lot of, like dramas and, like action movies and, the big epic films, like, I don't know, Superman or something like that, the sci-fi movies. All those movies they all evoke different emotions and sensations in us through the music. But I think in horror, it also works as tension, building tension, surprise. Like, I know for a fact that, take Scream, for example, right? If they didn't have that ching, all of a sudden, along with the appearance of some dude with a knife, wearing a cloak or whatever, it wouldn't have had the same effect, right?
Yeah. I mean, one of the courses I took when I was studying film scoring was we did this little exercise, and I may have mentioned this on the one-on-one podcast we did a long time ago, but we watched the opening sequence of the first Jaws movie with music, and then the same scene without music. Yep. And it just, without music, it almost looks like a travel.
It's like a travel video.
Sure, yeah, video.
Kids swimming in the water. How cute.
Yeah. So, yeah, it has a major impact on our emotions as viewers.
Yeah.
Do you feel oh, sorry. Continue.
No, I was going to turn it to you, so go for it.
Oh, no, because I guess what I wanted to ask too when it comes to, obviously, film scoring for films and how it evokes certain feeling. Is there I guess for somebody that doesn't really know anything about music, it's also asking like, is there like a particular style that most directors would ask of you when it comes to what they consider or what they think what film scoring is? You know, like, is it always going to be like, I guess in my head when I think film score, it's like orchestral or something. When I'm sure that's not always the case, right?
Yeah, I think it goes through phases and fads. You know, like originally film scores were created by composers who were classical composers, and so that's like the original history of film scoring. And so I think maybe that's why, like, when people hear that term, that's what they think of instinctively. But obviously, like, it's gone through phases. And I think there was a period of time in the 60s where film scores were very song-based. Like, if you think about, like, the original Pink Panther movies come to mind. Not everything, though, you know, because that was also the time of, like, the Hitchcock heydays, where his composer Bernard Herrmann was just creating these terrific scores that were much more orchestral based and not song based at all. So it kind of goes through phases, and you know, there was a period of time in the 80s where it was very synthesizer based. You know, I'm trying to think of like the original Blade Runner as one example, and then like late 70s, I think John Williams really helped to kind of like bring back the orchestral approach of writing music, like through pretty much like in tandem through the 80s while the synth type scores were being done. John Williams was also like cranking out Raiders of the Lost Ark and E.T. and, you know, Return of the Jedi. Like, so, you know, they were kind of happening at the same time. And then like flash forward to late 90s, early 2000s, that's kind of like where Hans Zimmer really, like with Rain Man, I think was like his first really big film. And, you know, and then he sort of became like, in a way, the benchmark of film scores. And to this day, very much still is. Like him and people that have worked in his studio who then branch out on their own, like, very much sound like sometimes a mistake. Like you can mistake a Hans Zimmer score for another big composer that used to work with him. Sometimes they're not easily distinguishable from each other. And so that is what it is. It's not really it's not a criticism, but I'm just saying, like, and his style is sort of this interesting mashup of synth-based sounds and textures with live orchestral musicians, and just like this, and also minimalism. He's very inspired by minimalism, and it's sort of like this really interesting mashup of those three sound worlds. And so that style is still very popular today. So like, and he, you know, I've watched interviews with him, and he sort of has to like reinvent himself because he's such at the forefront that, you know, other composers copy his sound. Like right. Once he's done a score, like he's got to like pretty radically change it for the next film, because then everybody else is trying to sound like that last movie he did. Because
it becomes like a standard for a particular type of film. Like it evokes the same, you know, oh, I want to get this emotion, I want to evoke this feeling, I'll just use something like what this guy did.
Exactly. Right? And he also works on really big films, you know, like Oscar nominated or Oscar winning films. And so like those are the films that everybody knows about pretty much like all over the world, you know, like it's like a touch point. And so like that's what people know. So, and that's the music they know, and it's really successful. So let's try and do the same thing. Like that's what I want. So that's kind of like a long answer to your question, Joey.
It actually, no, I think actually that plays into, you know, something that if you want to learn how to make movies, you got to watch movies. And it's the same thing with, if you want to learn about, you know, music for films, you got to listen to, you know, maybe in a way like Jaws, right? Just turn off the video or close your eyes and just listen to the audio and the music, the scores in each film to give you a more idea, or at least pay attention to them while you're watching them.
Absolutely.
So that you can learn from it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be the first to admit that I've listened to way more scores than I have time to watch movies.
I would imagine so, Jason.
And that's, I think both are important, like just for the experience, for sure, like especially watching films and trying to watch new films as much as possible is really important, just to see the work that's being done out there currently as much as possible. But yeah, also listening. But I also think it's important to listen to non-film score music too, because that, I think as a composer, it can help you have fresh ideas that are not like in the air necessarily of film scoring at that time, which could be like an advantage, I think.
Like some of the films of an era, right, will have music of that time that was popular in that time to sort of set the mood of this is that era, right? More than actual original film scores.
Yeah, I mean, I think of
like Empire Records. Is that what it was called, or
the show?
That movie. Yeah, that movie. That movie with is it Ethan Embry and all those guys? It starts out with the guy playing the drums to AC/DC in his office. And Empire Records, I think it's a pretty classic movie. And I know it's Empire something.
I'm not sure if I've seen that one, but yeah, I mean, I think of the first person I think of as Quentin Tarantino, because like I think for the most part, all his films, he used songs. I think except for one where he hired Ennio Morricone to score the film. I think everything else was just songs.
Like pin drops, basically? I guess isn't that the term when just like, I guess like just normal Billboard music being used in films? Is what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean, I think his like I've seen a lot of his films, and I think he has really interesting. He's made really interesting choices. I'm sure with his music supervisors helping, and his soundtracks are really fun to listen to. He's just like, I don't know. He finds some really fun and interesting bands and artists that really do fit the films. And like, I totally respect that decision too. And there's some shows that I love that don't really use scores, and I respect that too. Like that's what works for that particular world that person or persons are creating. So I don't think every piece needs to have score all the time. As weird as that might sound coming from me and what I do. But, at the end of the day, it's like you have to respect the story and the person's vision. And if it works, it works at the end of the day, right?
By the way, I was looking this up while we were talking. It is Empire Records.
Empire Records, okay.
Yeah. It's Anthony de la Playa that was in the opening scene playing the drums to AC/DC. And it's just like such a great kickstart to it. And it was Ethan Embry that was also in it. Anyways, I just wanted to bring that up because I loved that film and I watched it probably about 100 times. And it has a cult feel to it online. But anyways, enough about that. So,
cool.
Yeah, there's...
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, you'll have to watch it because you'll laugh your head off. But anyway, damn the man. There's little sayings like that you hear sometimes, and that's where it comes from.
Nice.
Joey?
yes.
I wonder if you could, and you and Jason, not because I don't want to be involved, but because I love listening to you guys, talk about this, but in the storytelling of like Asian films, they use a lot of cultural music, right? But I also One of the things, I don't know if you mentioned it, Jason, or if I'm remembering this from the other interview that you and I did, but, you know, Jason also conducted orchestras as well. And classical music, let me say the right term, classical music is a big part of, I know that Joey likes black and white films. And I'm thinking about some films that are black and white and then some Asian films. I'm attracted to Asian films because I think the acting is superb always, because it's, and the emotions and things like that. And I know that Joey knows what I'm talking about. Not because Joey cries in the movies, but maybe you do, Joey. I don't know.
Certain ones get to me, yeah, definitely.
but it can be very traumatic, the way that they portray that and perform that. And I think the music really, really plays into it a lot.
Every type of film, right, that has good story, right? Because it's not like, you know, like I guess what you're saying, it's not like Asian films only use Asian style music. Like that doesn't.
No, that's not what I'm saying, is what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly.
But that's what
they use a lot of classical music too.
I mean, do you think it's because that's just like the director's taste, right? Because like, you know, because like even though I'm like, you know, listening to what Jason's saying, and I'm actually kind of going through the ideas that I have in my head, and obviously what I think of, like I said, you know, film score is like the generality of like orchestral, because it's like bigger than life type of feeling, right? But you know, and I guess, you know, I'm thinking about what Blade Runner and using synth, and you know, it fits the world, that feel and stuff like that. I guess it's kind of like how I guess recently, I guess I've been, I don't know, it's kind of like seeing like younger like, you know, filmmakers, and how their music choices isn't the classical style of what you would think like a film score. It is very much like beats heavy looping type of you know, bars or whatnot. And you know, it's still kind of jarring for me, but I also understand that's probably kind of how they hear the music in you know, in their stories, right? If that makes sense. Like sometimes I'm not even sure if I'm saying something correct here in terms of.
No, I think you're right. Yeah. And that's why I was saying, like, I know that you like black and white movies, and I know that a lot of older films obviously are black and white, but are there any new ones? Like if you were gonna make a film in black and white today, would you choose orchestra? Because I think sometimes, I forgot, what is that term, Jason, where the music is the complete opposite of, like in Good Morning Vietnam, right? There's that scene where the soldiers, the body bags are going into the plane while the soldiers are getting out. And they have this, what do they call that? Keystone Cop music playing in the background. And it's like the opposite. It contradicts the mood and the setting of the scene. And it's done on purpose, and I forgot what the name of that term is. But like to have a black and white film and then use more modern music, you know? Like, how do you feel about things like that as far as, you know, because it's not part of the storytelling per se. It kind of contradicts it, but it does set.
But isn't that telling the story? I think that kind of makes sense if it's like,
yeah,
like almost like you could have dark humor. It's like, oh man, it's like a very sad scene, but then you have like, I don't know, like super happy music, right?
Yeah. Like, I guess that's part of the storytelling, but it's not like emphasizing a scene like you would think, like, oh, they're crying, let's play some violin, you know, that kind of a thing.
Can I just throw a curveball in here?
Please do.
So what that made me think of was the music from Star Wars. Like, you know, that's not a story that takes place on planet Earth. You know, it's in a different galaxy at a different time. So, like, if you think about it that way, what the hell does classical music have to do with that at all?
True.
You know, but it works. It grounds, that score helps to ground those characters, and it grounds the emotion of the story that they're telling. Because it's really, yes, it's an action think they refer to it as like a space opera, but it's really about the characters and their journeys in those stories. So in that context, even though it's an outer space movie, having, Western classical music actually really helps to ground it.
Right.
That just woke up a bunch of stuff in my brain.
Right. I mean, isn't the cantina music kind of iconic?
Yeah.
Right. And that's like, they're not even using like, anything that you would think sci-fi music would be, right?
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But then again, okay, sorry, this is not music related, but even like sci-fi, if you really think about it, it's like all of the tropes of sci-fi is really not anything about the future. It's just more about like the looping downfall of humanity. It's either really religious or like just very political, but people don't just notice sci-fi stories like that, I think.
I think I was talking before about how it's depressing to me. I can't watch that many of those movies where they're like stuck in a spaceship out in the middle of nowhere. I find them kind of depressing. I'm not a claustrophobic person at all. And it feels, but I feel kind of claustrophobic when I'm watching those films. It's like, really, the whole film is like in these metal walls with the sound of the spaceship. And that's it. Like, I just get really down on it. I can only watch 5 minutes of it or something. But I guess, what you're alluding to in a way, Jason, is sort of, and you too, Joey, it's kind of like the connection between story and emotion being the music, right? The audio, the sound, yes, it is the story, and it involves a lot of elements to it, including production design and, set design, all these things, the colors and the color grading, all these things. But I think music is like, if you don't have that in a lot of the actual films, not in every scene or anything, obviously, it's like the missing link in a way if you don't have something that's right and that fits right. Right,
1,000%. 1,000%.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you can really change the feeling of a story by the music, and so it really does have to fit. I think you can kind of like turn or twist the imagery on the screen to be in a direction that's something that's not necessarily what the director intended. If you're not on the same page with the director, like, I think it's so important to be on the same page as a composer with the director and the producer, or whoever's making the final call with the music, because it's important. And sometimes people have spent years working on a film between writing it and revising the script and all the auditions that they go through to cast it, and the crew, the building out of the crew, and then the actual filming, and then the editing. It's a massive endeavor to make something, to make a film. And so again, you're just one piece of that whole journey for a filmmaker. And so you really have to get that right, I think, as a composer. Or otherwise, if you don't quit the project, you'll probably be fired from it, and understandably so. I mean, again, like, this is someone put their blood and sweat into this project and that they're making, and you're not always, but a lot of times you're post-production, so you're towards the end of that journey that they've been on as a filmmaker. And so it's critical. That's why I said 1,000%. You have to be on the same page, and you have to create a sound world that is completely in sync with the story that person's trying to tell.
And it complements it in a way, right, too?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, there's all these tricks you can do with music, to lead an audience in a certain direction. You can give them clues through music. Early on in a story, you can give them clues to where, or suggestions to where maybe the story might go by the end of the film. That's evolved too in terms of score, because I was actually the other day watching with my daughter and my wife watching the Disney film. It's Bed Knobs and Broomsticks.
Oh, and yeah, I remember that.
An old school one, I think from the 70s.
Yeah.
And the music is very much like hitting things on the nose, like hitting things so hard. And I know part of it is the genre. It's more acceptable, but all these years later, I think it's gotten a lot more subtle and more sophisticated in a way, in terms of, for the most part, the film music is more suggestive than it would be, in a film from the 70s and that kind of film. But it just depends, I think, on the project and the genre. But I think if these days, as a composer, unless you're doing animation, a lot of animation stuff is still very much kind of hits things on the nose, and
right.
There's a hit on screen and there'll be a hit in the music,
Right.
That is one genre, and sometimes in action too. But for the most part, anything and actually sometimes thriller horror does that too. But for the most part, things are a lot more subtle. As a composer, you wouldn't want to give something away, right? Super early in a story, you have to be really careful too. You can play with the audience, and you can play with expectations and where they think a story might go. For sure, you can play with those things, but you also have to be kind of careful,
because it is very psychological. You have to know that part.
Absolutely. Yeah. As the composer, where the story's going by the end, but you wouldn't want to necessarily give that away, a third or halfway through a movie by the music, you're right, which you totally could unintentionally do that.
Well,
so I think it's just gotten a little bit more sophisticated, I think, in that way.
Definitely. You were just talking about the end, the journey and the end. And I'm looking at the clock, and I know that our time is very limited here. And I wanted to kind of leave everyone on a positive note that, especially with mobile filmmaking, yes, you can still think about getting a composer for your film, whether you're making a short film or a feature film. As a matter of fact, the way that I met Jason was at our film festival. He was representing someone who made a short film, and he scored that film. And so as a mobile filmmaker, want to make sure that you understand that we're not talking about Hollywood films, even though we're using them as examples because they're familiar and you probably can watch those and know of them. But this is something that I hope inspires you to help you. And if you ever come to a point in your film and you're sitting in the editing room with the editor, or if you're the editor and you're thinking there's something missing, there's something lacking here, turn to the music. Think about the music a little bit. And maybe that can just make the entire difference between making a kind of feel it to a whoa, that's awesome. And if it's awesome, make sure you submit it to the International Mobile Film Festival in San Diego. Jason, thank you so much for being on the show this time. It was so great talking with you. Got any last words there, Joey?
No, definitely. Music is important. Definitely, music is important.
I think we both learned a few things too, and that means that our listeners did. So, Jason, do you have any last words? We are going to put all the links to follow Jason, just so you know.
I would just say, hopefully this is inspiring for people, and I hope that folks continue to make art and films from their heart.
Oh, that's where all the art comes from. Mm-hmm. That's why it rhymes with heart. All right. Well, thank you so much, both of you. Say goodbye to our listeners.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.